Last episode we talked about shaping a repair panel for this rusty piece of floor on the passenger side. Now it's time for the actual repair. We'll start by cutting out the affected area. Since we're going to the trouble of making a panel and welding it in, there's really no need to be stingy here. We'll make the repair piece from this piece of sheet metal. It was scavenged from the hood of a VW engine donor from one of our previous race cars. After a visit with our shaping tool in the press from last episode, it has gained some fancy ridges. And now we just have to weld it in. We'll start by tacking it every inch or so, and then moving around the panel, filling in the gaps slowly, avoiding putting too much heat into the panel as not to warp anything. It's a lot of time spent on knees. We'll also put a drain hole into the panel, just in case we need to drain any unforeseen fluids from the car. You never know. And now to check if the plug fits. Yep. Lastly, we can grind the welds back to our heart's content. But in the end, this is just a Lemons car, so we're not going for a concourse restoration here. It's mostly about not leaving any sharp edges that might catch a piece of clothing or something like that. A lick of paint completes the job. Not too shabby, if I might say so myself. After the rust repair on the inside and a summer break, we're back at the front where we started. And if you recall, the entire premise of this was to get some strength into the shock towers. In fact, that's why we relocated the hood struts to back here in one of the earlier episodes. So we could use this area for some strengthening. After some hemming and hawing, I decided that I would like to replicate what we have done on a bunch of our other cars, which is use cage tubing to tie the shock towers into the cage. That has several benefits. First of all, it actually does add a ton of strength to the shock towers and keeps them from moving around. I don't think it's the only thing that I would rely on given this geometry, and we'll talk about that in the future, how else we're gonna tie it in, but it does add a lot of just rigidity. The other thing that it does is, in the case of a frontal impact, it will most likely not move the, depending on how bad the impact is, but we've had cars that were involved in crashes where a lot of the front end of the car was bent, but that is part of the car's crumple zone. It's supposed to absorb the energy, and you can pull it back out if it's not too bad, and the sort of alignment of the frame rails in the front doesn't have to be completely exact. And so some of our cars, they have been beaten a lot, and they have been through a lot, and they are definitely more like, aluminum foil in the front in terms of how straight they are. But that's fine. Where you do want some sort of precision and accuracy is the shock towers, because they locate your front axle. So one of the reasons, and this has saved some of our cars definitely, is tying these into the cage will locate them and prevent them from moving quite a bit in the case of an unfortunate accident. And they do happen. It's racing. The best, if a bit harrowing, example from our own team was a crash involving our turbo diesel powered Porsche 911 a few years ago. Due to a combination of unfortunate circumstances and very little warning or visual cues, our driver encountered a nearly stationary car on track and rear-ended it. All the drivers were okay thanks to the safety equipment. The car, on the other hand, looked totaled. But thanks to the fact that we had tied the shock towers into the cage, it was actually saved. It helped, of course, that there was no engine up front. And after just a couple of hours of work, we had unwrinkled the front bodywork and installed a spare radiator. And miraculously, the car went out back to race the same day and continued to compete in many races afterward. I think that's enough motivation for us to do the same thing to the bitter. We'll get started on that next time. Thank you for watching this video about the bitter lemon, and remember to subscribe our channel.